Yeah, the eye, well, both eyes, but especially the right eye, still ongoing. I felt like the fight was going okay. It was going pretty much to plan. I think that, look, there was this big notion in the media before that I'm just going to run through Ciryl Gane. Look, I might look like an idiot. Sometimes I might even talk like an idiot. But when it comes to fighting, I know what I'm talking about. And I know that Ciryl Gane is a tough matchup for me. Really good defensively. I knew that if we want to break the fight down a little bit, Cyryl's got really good defense. He moves really, really well on his feet. I knew that I have to stand in range and take a few punches from Ciryl to be able to land my own shots.
So listen to this situation. Tom Aspinall is going absolutely nuclear right now. And I'm talking complete scorched earth mode as he unleashes pure fury at Ciryl Gane after that brutal eye poke disaster during their fight. But wait, it gets even messier. He's not stopping with Gane either. Aspinall has his sights locked on Dana White and the whole UFC machine. This thing has turned into complete pandemonium, and every single piece of this story is going to blow your mind. Let's break down this madness.
We found a video of basically from that first round with Gane's sort of finger pokes. Just want you to watch it if you can see, and just sort of explain what's going on. So what have you just seen there?
I've just seen that every time his hand comes out, it does this. And it's wrong.
Have you heard from Ciryl Gane at all, or any contact or anything post-fight?
Nope.
And your thoughts on him at the moment?
My thoughts on him, I think he's a big cheater. I think that, look at all his fights.
Okay, so picture this scenario for a moment. 6 months of brutal training for literally the most important fight of your life. Every single hour, every sacrifice, every ounce of pain has led to this exact moment. There you are standing in that Abu Dhabi octagon, under those blazing lights, defending your undisputed UFC heavyweight title against one of the most lethal strikers on the planet. The action is just heating up. You're starting to feel comfortable. You're executing your strategy perfectly. Then in one devastating instant, everything you've sacrificed for gets stolen from you. That's the nightmare that became reality for Tom Aspinall on October 25th, 2025, at UFC 31. And brother, what's happened since that cursed night has been pure warfare that might tear down everything in its path. Now, before we get into the absolute madness that's erupted since that nightmare in Abu Dhabi, we need to break down the complete picture. Because this wasn't just another fight on any card. This was years of mounting pressure, serious accusations, getting thrown around, and real animosity finally exploding in the most devastating way imaginable. The beef between Tom Aspinall and Ciryl Gane actually began without any hate, which makes it even more interesting. Back in 2021 through 2023, their interactions were actually respectful, with both heavyweight killers recognizing each other's skills as rising forces in the division. They were climbing these similar paths, both working their way toward the summit of what most consider the most brutal and competitive division in mixed martial arts. But that respect they shared started to deteriorate and completely collapse. Aspinall began making claims that would define the entire build-up to their inevitable collision. He accused Gane of avoiding fights against him and other elite heavyweights like Sergey Pavlovich and Curtis Blades. In Aspinall's telling, the only reason he faced Pavlovich at UFC 29.5 was because Gane had passed on the fight when the UFC offered it. He even suggested that Gane might be focusing more on his Hollywood career than fighting, genuinely questioning his dedication to MMA, and whether he was truly committed to being a fighter. Gane obviously had his own version of these events. He pushed back hard on these accusations, stating that he never backs down from challenges, and that certain fights like the Blades matchup, everyone kept mentioning, were never actually offered to him by the organization. His coach Fernand Lopez eventually clarified that the UFC only officially offered the Aspinall fight for UFC 304 in July 2024. And this came after Gane had already locked into a film commitment he couldn't abandon. By late 2024, Gane was even saying he had actively pursued a fight with Aspinall as early as March, but that Aspinall's team had turned down the opportunity. So accusations were flying everywhere, and the hatred was reaching a breaking point that everyone could feel building. Leading up to UFC 31.1, he called out Aspinall's tendency of putting his hands on opponents during pre-fight stare-downs, calling it pointless and totally unnecessary for measuring reach. Meanwhile, Aspinall brushed off all the predictions about being dragged into deep waters, pointing out that fighters who make those predictions usually end up getting finished early in fights. Press conferences and stare-downs revealed this obvious, undeniable tension between these two men. This had become deeply personal on every single level. This was years of built-up frustration, accusations, and genuine bad blood, finally getting its moment to be settled. Or at least that's what everyone believed was about to go down. When that octagon door locked on October 25, 2025 in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates, Aspinall was defending the undisputed heavyweight championship for the first time, a belt he'd been promoted to after John Jones gave it up when he retired earlier that year. Gane, the former interim champion, was coming off a disputed split decision victory over Alexander Volkov in December 2024. That many observers felt he'd lost. Everyone expected an incredible striking battle, with Aspinall's wrestling potentially being the deciding factor. And in those first few minutes, that's exactly what was developing, with both fighters displaying their elite skills. The fight was legitimately competitive in those early moments, with both guys proving why they belonged at the very top of the division. Gane had opened up Aspinall's nose with crisp jabs, and punishing leg kicks connecting with clean counters every time Aspinall tried to get close. While Aspinall went for one takedown attempt that Gane stuffed effectively, both men were studying each other, finding their distance and time. They were starting what everyone in that building and watching worldwide thought would be a 5-round masterclass between two of the most gifted and athletic heavyweights in UFC history. Then at 4 minutes and 35 seconds of round 1, everything collapsed in the most heartbreaking way possible. During a striking exchange with both fighters in close range, trading shots, Gane extended his left hand with fingers spread, landing them straight into both of Aspinall's eyes at once. Slow-motion footage that would be analyzed endlessly in the following days showed Gane's fingers making deep penetration, with Aspinall instantly pulling back and grabbing his face in clear agony. The poke hit the right eye hardest, but medical documentation released later confirmed damage to both eyes. Referee Jason Herzog called it an accidental foul, allowing Aspinall the usual 5 minutes to recover and attempt to continue. But Aspinall was completely unable to keep fighting. He literally couldn't see straight, and what happened next made history in the worst way possible, and not how anyone wanted to witness. This became the first time in UFC history that a championship fight was declared a no contest because of an accidental foul, which is incredible when you consider the decades of UFC history. The Abu Dhabi crowd erupted in boos, and Aspinall, still unable to see clearly, still trying to process what had been ripped away from him, grabbed the microphone and told the world exactly what he thought about what had just gone down.
Even John Jones himself, even the GOAT himself, said before he fought him that Ciryl Gane's a cheater and uses dirty tactics.
So what exactly are you dealing with right now? Like, what happens when you try to look around? My eye is barely opening at all.
Ouais, non, c'était pas intentionnel. Comme l'arbitre m'a dit, j'ai bien vu, tes mains étaient comme ceci. Mais des fois, tu essaies de repousser quelqu'un, si ça tombe au niveau de son visage, malheureusement, ça tombe au niveau de ses yeux. Mais c'était pas comme ça, c'était pas intentionnel. Mais personne connaît la gravité de son œil. Moi, je me rappelle du combat face à Derrick Lewis. Quand on prend un doigt dans l'œil, moi, j'ai vu Derrick Lewis pendant presque un round. J'ai vu 2 Derrick Lewis, tu vois ce que je veux dire? Donc, étant donné qu'il a commencé le combat comme ça, et que, imaginons, il a eu autant que ça, de gravité, il s'est dit peut-être ça vaut pas le coup de prendre des risques. Voilà, peut-être.
Aspinall kept his title on paper, but the result created massive controversy throughout the MMA world and far beyond. What nobody realized yet, what couldn't be grasped in those immediate moments, was just how bad the injury really was, and how much more explosive things were about to become between Aspinall, Gane, and the UFC organization itself. This was only the opening act of what would turn into a complete war.
Hunter Campbell, who I deal with personally, he's just said if they can help out in any way with doctors and stuff like that, that's what they'll do.
When do you think you can start training again?
Look, it's not up to me. It's up to the doctors. At the minute, I ain't allowed to do nothing, so I'm just following advice at the moment.
What's next?
What's next for me right now is there's talk of surgery on the eyes. We've got to see how it goes over the next few weeks. Obviously, that's down to the specialists and stuff, but I'm not in the gym training at the moment. I'm not doing anything MMA-wise at the moment. I'm just following the doctor's orders right now and seeing what happens with the health.
During the days and weeks after UFC 31, what began as a frustrating conclusion to a title fight that nobody wanted to see escalated into something far more intense than anyone could have imagined. Tom Aspinall wasn't simply upset about how the fight ended, which would have made perfect sense by itself. No, he was totally convinced that what transpired in that cage was absolutely no accident whatsoever. When Aspinall finally reviewed the video footage, really examining what occurred in that crucial moment, his entire view of the incident shifted dramatically. What he first believed in those chaotic moments after might have been a tragic accident began looking like something much more calculated when he studied the tape closely.
Well, listen, I didn't continue. I'll tell you why I didn't continue. Because I'm not a dummy. Like, I'm not going to go out there and fight one of the best strikers in the world if I can't see.
With double vision.
With any eye. Look, I know, as an MMA fighter, look, things are going to happen in the fight that compromise you. Go back and watch my fight with Arlovsky. The end of the first round, he punched me right in the eyeball.
Final 20 seconds of the first round.
Before the fight-ending moment even took place, Gane had already been cautioned twice by the referee for similar finger extensions, which is a crucial detail that many people overlooked initially. Video analysis revealed several moments where his fingers were aimed straight at Aspinall's eyes during their striking exchanges. Certain analysts and fans who really examined the footage claimed the poke appeared deliberate because of how Gane spread his fingers wide and pressed deeper into Aspinall's eye area, instead of making brief contact. Gane didn't stay quiet in his public comments that came after. He released a statement on social media that spread like wildfire, and I'm quoting directly here, "The guy was trying to poke my eyes out throughout that entire round. The guy was cheating from the opening bell. I think he's a massive cheater." He wasn't limiting his accusations to just this single fight either. He pointed out Gane's track record of fouls in multiple previous fights, including strikes to the back of the head and low blows in earlier contests that people could research and confirm. When Gane posted on Instagram about the rematch, everyone was discussing. Aspinall responded directly in the comments section, writing, and I'm quoting exactly, "No shit. There's not a date yet. I'm not medically cleared to fight and I'm about to have surgery, thanks to your disgusting fingernails. I'll be back to smash your face in soon, you cheat." Those are serious fighting words by any standard. Gane throughout this entire drama has stood by his version of events from day one of the controversy.
For the rest of that fight, I couldn't see him out that eye. That's fine. If you get punched or kicked in the eye, that's fine. If you get double eye poked in both eyes and you've got no vision because of a foul, why should I carry on so some dummy can look and say, "Oh yeah, Tom just got knocked out"? Because I ain't going to fight if I can't see anything because of a foul. If it's a little illegal move, we have to fight through it. That's what we do as fighters. But when it's a foul, why am I going to put my health at risk when I can't see?
Straight from the beginning.
It's a tough one, isn't it? I've seen obviously there's been a lot of discussion on eye pokes and fouls since. The referee himself said pre-fight that the best thing about fouling is it works. That's Jason Herzog's words, not my words.
The best part about fouling, right, is that it works. So the best thing you can do is like keep your head in the game, and I'll do everything I can to manage it.
Yeah, you see guys like Derek Lewis coming out saying, you know, if you're tired, kick him in the nuts, poke him in the eyes, do something that'll give you a little break, because there's basically no punishment for it.
So I told my coach if that happens, like in the fight with him, then I'm going to knee him in the nuts on purpose.
Things need to change in the sport of MMA when it comes to fouls.
Gane issued a public apology after the fight, and his words seemed sincere to many observers. He stated, "I'm very sorry for that. For the crowd, for the fans, for everybody, I'm sorry for myself. We put a lot of energy into this fight. I'm very disappointed, but this is the sport. But apologies, regardless of how genuine they sounded, weren't going to be enough for Aspinall. Especially not when he was dealing with the reality of what proved to be a much more serious injury than anyone first understood in those initial hours. Following the fight, 3 days post-fight, when people assumed maybe it was just short-term damage, Aspinall's father Andy announced publicly that Tom still had zero vision in his right eye, demanding immediate reforms to stop eye pokes in MMA before someone becomes permanently blind. But the medical updates would only get more alarming as time passed. More than a month later, on November 30th, 2025, Aspinall was diagnosed with severe condition, preventing upward eye movement, along with ongoing double vision that refused to improve, blurred sight that made daily activities challenging, reduced movement in both eyes, and partial vision loss. He remains medically suspended from combat sports, and doctors warned he might need steroid treatments or even surgery if the symptoms don't improve within a specific time frame. However, the medical situation, as devastating as it was wasn't even the most infuriating aspect for Aspinall. When it came to dealing with everything that had occurred, what really ignited his rage, what truly sent him over the breaking point, was how he believed the UFC and Dana White specifically were representing him in interviews to the public. Dana White stated in a media appearance, and these words struck incredibly deep. I mean, he had Tom bloodied up, and, Tom didn't want to continue in the fight. Those comments from Dana White, particularly that phrase, Tom didn't want to continue, hit Aspinall's pride and reputation like a sledgehammer, and Aspinall wasn't about to let those words go unanswered. Dating back to 2005, at minimum 7 UFC fights have been ruled no contest specifically because of accidental eye pokes, which proves this is a widespread issue that's existed for decades. The problem isn't recent by any measure, but it's never received more spotlight or generated more discussion than it has right now, with this major championship bout ending this way. The hostility between these two fighters has only intensified and gotten more personal since the fight concluded. What used to be competitive rivalry with some level of respect has evolved into what seems like genuine hatred, at least from Aspinall's perspective. When you listen to his interviews, a rematch now involves personal stakes that extend far beyond a title belt, or rankings, or legacy. This situation has sparked renewed serious discussions throughout MMA about eye poke regulations and whether current rules are sufficient. Right now, under unified rules, accidental pokes lead to referee warnings, with point deductions only happening if the official believes the action was intentional, which is a completely subjective decision. Disqualifications for eye pokes are incredibly uncommon in the sport's history. The UFC's redesigned gloves, which were modified in June 2024 specifically to reduce eye pokes through a new curved structure, obviously haven't fixed the problem, like everyone hoped they would. Veteran official Herb Dean, one of the most respected referees in MMA, suggested that officials might need to start enforcing much harsher point penalties moving forward if fighters don't maintain closed fists. Proposed solutions being discussed by fighters, coaches, and experts include mandatory point deductions for first violations, regardless of intention, or more radical glove changes to physically force closed fists during striking. Chael Sonnen, the former UFC title contender and current commentator, has addressed this topic extensively on his shows, pointing out that eye pokes happen significantly more in UFC than other fighting sports because of glove structure and the traditional absence of serious consequence. The sport requires fundamental change at the institutional level, but whether that will actually happen and when stays unclear. Aspinall isn't the first athlete to have his career impacted or destroyed by an eye poke, and the record of these incidents in UFC history is honestly disturbing when you review them all. In the Yair Rodriguez versus Jeremy Stephens bout at UFC Fight Night 59, Rodriguez accidentally poked Stephens just 15 seconds into round 1, creating a no contest after Stephens couldn't continue because of a corneal scratch that was immediately obvious. Sean O'Malley versus Pedro Munhoz at UFC 27 saw Munhoz unable to see for roughly 20 minutes, following an eye poke, also ending in a disappointing no contest that robbed fans of the fight they paid to watch. Maybe most notably in recent years, Stipe Miocic poked Daniel Cormier during their trilogy fight at UFC 2052, and Cormier, being the warrior he is, kept fighting basically blind in one eye, enduring a completely swollen eyelid and damaged cornea, ultimately losing by unanimous decision in a bout many believed he would have dominated with proper vision. Michael Bisping's entire career was essentially shaped by accumulated eye injuries over time, leading to a detached retina that impacted him permanently, and he's been open about the lasting damage he deals with today. The risks are absolutely real, the damage can be permanent and life-changing, and until the regulations change in a significant way, fighters like Aspinall will keep paying the cost with their health and futures. The responses from the MMA community have been pretty divided over. Alex Pereira, the current light heavyweight champion, mentioned that he's witnessed worse situations where fighters pushed through and finished, but emphasized that only Aspinall truly knows how he felt in that moment. A balanced response that recognizes the impossible situation Aspinall faced without making judgments. Throughout all this chaos and controversy, Aspinall and the emotional aftermath of UFC